Beloved, hear me by the Spirit. Whenever God is ready to shift a destiny, he opens a prophetic window that collapses the strength of darkness. These next 3 days are not ordinary days. They are divine days. Days loaded with judgment, exposure, and complete reversal. Whatever has lifted itself against your life, your family, your assignment, your health, and your rising shall bow in these 3 days. There are seasons when God fights for a man, and there are seasons when God fights because of a man. Tonight, you are stepping into the second dimension. Every voice that has mocked you, every power that has resisted you, every enemy that has risen in secret or in the open, hear this, they will confess and they will fall. For too long, some of you have been surrounded by battles you did not start. You have cried in silence, fought in silence, endured in silence, but these 3 days will speak loudly. Heaven is responding. The Lion of Judah is arising. The fire of God is moving. The altar of darkness will not survive the next 72 hours. By the authority of the Spirit, I announce, every enemy that said you will not rise will confess your rising. Every enemy that swore you will not succeed will confess your success. Every enemy that gathered to bury your destiny will fall before your testimony. Get ready, because what God will do in 3 days will silence years of warfare. What God will do in 3 days will shock your enemies and announce your victory. Lift your spirit, open your heart, and prepare. The hand of God is about to shift your story forever. When God decides to move on behalf of his children, time becomes a servant, not a master. There are moments when what should take years is compressed into days, and what seems impossible becomes inevitable. This is the mystery of divine acceleration, a principle in the spirit that the natural mind cannot comprehend. It is the hand of God manifesting in ways that silence every form of delay, opposition, and resistance. For some of you, you have been waiting for breakthrough, praying for resolution, and wrestling with invisible forces that seem stronger than you. But hear this, there is a time when God shifts the narrative, and suddenly the impossible becomes visible. The hidden schemes of the enemy are unveiled, and the long-standing battles are brought to an end. Divine acceleration is not random. It is a deliberate movement of God to bring judgment on the powers that rise against you. There are enemies you cannot see. There are plots that have been woven in secret. But when the Spirit of God moves, those plots unravel in the exact moment he chooses. 3 days may seem brief to the natural eye, but in the supernatural realm, 3 days can contain the power to reverse years of oppression. The same God who caused the Red Sea to part in an instant can turn your battlefield into a platform of victory within a limited span of time. The key is understanding that your breakthrough is not dependent on your ability, your strength, or your planning. It is dependent on God's timing and his supernatural intervention. For too long, some of you have been bound by the patience of men, by the expectation of the world, and by the limitations of circumstances. You have been waiting for doors to open slowly, for enemies to retreat gradually, and for favor to manifest in human time. But God is teaching you a profound truth tonight. His timing is sudden, his power is unmatched, and his vengeance on behalf of his children is swift. The hand of God is not slowed by human delay. It is accelerated by divine authority. When God decides what should take months, years, or decades can be accomplished in 3 days, the forces that have risen against you will be disoriented, confused, and compelled to bow before the authority of God in your life. This acceleration does not only bring judgment, it brings revelation. Suddenly, you will see things that have been hidden. Every scheme, every deception, every enemy plan that has been whispered against you. Divine acceleration exposes, vindicates, and establishes. It forces those who oppose your destiny to confront the truth of God's favor upon your life. There is a spiritual law. When God fights for you, time itself becomes a weapon. Your prayers, your fasting, your obedience, though they have seemed slow in response, will find manifestation in a sudden eruption of power. Beloved, it is not by might nor by human effort. This is a supernatural principle. The acceleration of God is designed to remind you that your life is not in the hands of men. Your enemies are not stronger than the spirit that fights for you, and your victory is not measured by human standards. Within 3 days, what the enemy thought would never happen will happen. What he believed was unchangeable will change. What was long delayed will suddenly manifest. Your enemies will not only fail, they will bow, they will confess, and they will fall. The hand of God is moving, and acceleration is the language he is speaking. Prepare yourself to walk into the suddenness of divine intervention, for your breakthrough is imminent and your story is about to shift forever. There is a principle in the spirit that every hidden thing must eventually be revealed. Darkness cannot endure in the presence of God's light, and every secret plot devised against you carries within it the seed of its own exposure. For too long, many have been surrounded by enemies they could not see, people who smiled in their faces while scheming in silence, forces that whispered lies in shadows, and situations where deception had become almost permanent. But the Spirit of God declares that what is hidden will be uncovered, and what is covered will be revealed. This is the mystery of divine exposure, and it is one of the most powerful weapons available to those who trust in the justice of heaven. Divine exposure is not selective or partial. God's light penetrates every corner, every hidden chamber, and every plot designed to harm his children. It brings to the surface what has been secret and forces every opposing force into the open. Those who have risen against you in disguise will find that their disguises cannot hold. Every mask, every pretense, and every hidden agenda will be stripped away, leaving your enemies to face the consequences of their own scheming. The very words they whispered against you, the very plans they thought were unseen, will now meet the revelation of God's truth. This is not by accident. It is a deliberate work of divine justice, and it is a prelude to victory. The timing of exposure is critical. In these 3 days, the spiritual light will intensify around your life. Every conspiracy, every betrayal, and every covert attack will be brought into clarity. People who once pretended loyalty will be forced to confess their deceit. Circumstances that seem manipulated against you will be rearranged by divine intervention. This exposure is not intended to shame you. It is intended to vindicate you. It is designed to remove confusion, silence doubt, and establish your name before God, men, and even the spiritual realm. What the enemy sought to use as a weapon will become the platform of your testimony. Many struggle to understand why God allows deception to thrive in the first place. But the purpose of allowing hidden opposition is to prepare the environment for revelation. When God finally lifts the veil, the outcome is unmistakable, undeniable, and irreversible. Those who plotted against you will no longer find cover in darkness. Their strategies will crumble, and their words will crumble. Betray them. There is a law in the spirit. Everything hidden in darkness is eventually exposed by the light of God. Your faith, patience, and endurance in prayer are now positioning you for a season where every hidden scheme will meet the transparency of divine scrutiny. Divine exposure also serves as a warning to the wicked. The day is coming when no lie, no gossip, no betrayal, and no hidden evil will escape accountability. And for you, the faithful, this exposure brings freedom. No longer will you be ensnared by the unseen forces that have delayed your breakthrough. No longer will you carry the burden of hidden opposition. As the enemy's secrets are revealed, your path becomes clearer, your destiny becomes brighter, and your victory becomes undeniable. Beloved, embrace this revelation with boldness. Celebrate the mystery of divine exposure, for it is God's way of clearing the battlefield before your ascent. Every hidden enemy will be unveiled. Every silent adversary will be forced to confront the truth, and every secret plot will backfire. Prepare yourself, for in these 3 days the light of God will shine, the truth will emerge, and your enemies will find that their deception cannot withstand the brightness of heaven. You will rise, they will fall, and their secrets will proclaim your victory. There is a law in the spirit that governs every battle, every opposition, and every scheme devised against the children of God. It is called the law of spiritual judgment, and it is unchangeable, immovable, and absolute. God is a God of patience, but he is also a God of justice. He does not ignore the cries of his people, nor does he allow evil to go unpunished indefinitely. Every resistance, every attack, every force that rises to hinder your destiny will one day face a verdict in the courts of heaven. And in the realm of the spirit, this judgment is swift, precise, and irreversible. The principle is simple. What rises against your purpose will eventually be confronted by God's authority. The delay you experience is not a denial. It is prompken. It's a setup. God is positioning every circumstance so that when the judgment comes, it will be absolute. There is a reason why some enemies seem untouchable or invisible. Their strength is illusory and their victory is temporary. The law of spiritual judgment ensures that no one can oppose God's plan for your life without facing consequences. Every plot, every whisper of deceit, every hidden attack is recorded, and every opposition will meet its appointed time of reckoning. The beauty of this law is its fairness. God's judgment is not biased by human power, social influence, or worldly position. The same measure of justice applies to the mighty and the humble alike. Those who have risen against you in arrogance, those who have plotted in secret, those who have used power to intimidate will all find that their efforts are fruitless in the face of divine scrutiny. Their time is every time limited, and the hour of exposure is near. In 3 days, every scheme against you will encounter God's judgment. The enemy may attempt to fight back, but spiritual law ensures that resistance against the purposes of God is futile. This judgment operates on multiple levels. It is not only about exposing the enemy, it is also about dismantling their power and reversing their attacks. Every enchantment, every manipulative strategy, every plan intended to cause delay or destruction will collapse under divine authority. The law of spiritual judgment is not a suggestion, it is a command of heaven. And when God enforces it, no earthly intervention can alter the outcome. You may wonder why it seems like some enemies continue to prosper, but the truth is that their prosperity is temporary and their fall inevitable. Divine judgment works according to God's perfect timing, ensuring that your victory is both righteous and complete. Furthermore, this law brings peace to the heart of the faithful. Knowing that God is the ultimate judge releases you from anxiety, fear, and resentment. You no longer have to expend energy trying to retaliate or control the outcome. The courts of heaven are open and your adversaries are already in trial. What you need to do is align with God, pray without ceasing, and trust that the verdict will favor you. In these 3 days, the judgment of God will manifest, causing confusion, defeat, and confession among those who have opposed you. Beloved, understand this truth. No plan of the enemy can withstand the law of spiritual judgment. Every opposition, every adversary, and every resistance is under God's scrutiny. As you step into these 3 days, expect sudden revelations, sudden reversals, and sudden confessions. The hand of God is not slow, and his justice is not denied. Your enemies will face what they cannot escape. They will fall before the authority of God, and their plans will serve to magnify your testimony. The law of spiritual judgment is in motion. Your victory is inevitable. In the spirit, there is a principle that the atmosphere around a person can determine the course of their life. Some environments, some gatherings, and some spiritual altars carry power that either strengthens destiny or opposes it. The powers that rise against you often operate through unseen atmospheres, places filled with delay, stagnation, confusion, sickness, or spiritual resistance. But the God we serve is a God of authority, and his presence has the power to shift any atmosphere. When his spirit moves, what was heavy becomes light, what was cursed becomes blessed, and what was restricted becomes open. This is the mystery of spiritual atmospheres, and understanding it is essential for your breakthrough. Altars in the spirit are also critical. There are altars that speak life and altars that speak death. Every enemy, every adversary, and every force that has risen against you has likely built altars to hinder your progress. These are not always physical altars. They can be altars of prayer, deception, or even generational curses that are spiritually programmed to block your destiny. But just as the enemy builds, God also gives the authority to dismantle your prayers, your declarations, and your fasting are keys to releasing fire that consumes every altar speaking against your life. In these 3 days, the altars that have been opposing your rise will be broken, and their influence will be neutralized. The atmosphere around you is not limited to the natural. There are spiritual atmospheres created by demonic powers, by spirits of jealousy, by confusion, and by stagnation. These atmospheres can weigh heavily on your progress, causing delay where there should be acceleration and doubt where there should be faith. But the hand of God can shift atmospheres. His presence releases light, clarity, and order. Every chain, every confusion, every form of spiritual limitation can be lifted. When you declare God's authority, every atmosphere that has been hostile to your destiny will be transformed into an environment that favors your rise. This power operates in conjunction with the authority of your life. There is a spiritual law. Wherever you align with God, you carry his presence, and wherever his presence rests, darkness flees. That is why prayer, worship, and the declaration of God's word are critical. The prayers of the righteous have the power to break altars, shift atmospheres, and release favor. In these 3 days, your prayers will reach the courts of heaven with such force that every spiritual obstacle that has opposed you will crumble. The altars of limitation, stagnation, and opposition will be consumed by fire. Every atmosphere that has held you back will bend to the authority of God moving in your life. Beloved, never underestimate the power of spiritual alignment. The battles of life are not always visible, and the forces that seek to oppose your destiny often operate in realms that are unseen. But the Spirit of God is stronger than every hidden power. By positioning yourself in prayer, obedience, and faith, you create an environment where God's power can move unhindered. In these 3 days, expect sudden shifts. Expect altars to be broken. Expect atmospheres to be transformed. What once hindered your progress will now serve as a testimony of God's power and faithfulness. Prepare yourself for this transformation. Declare it with boldness. As the enemy's altars crumble and the atmospheres of delay collapse, you will rise in a way that cannot be stopped. Your breakthrough is imminent. Your victory is assured, and your enemies will witness the authority of God moving on your behalf. The power of atmospheres and altars is in motion, and nothing will remain the same. There is a law in the spirit that governs expectations. The expectations of the wicked, the plans of the enemy, and the strategies formed in darkness. Every scheme, every plot, and every trap is built upon expectation. The enemy expects defeat, stagnation, or delay in your life. He expects your efforts to fail, your destiny to be blocked, and your breakthrough to be delayed. But God is about to shift that dynamic. In these 3 days, every evil expectation formed against you will collapse. Every plan that was meant to harm, hinder, or frustrate your progress will be frustrated by the hand of God. The enemy may have thought he could predict your future, but God is about to make the impossible inevitable. Evil expectations are often hidden. They are not always visible in the natural, but they influence outcomes in the spiritual realm. They are the blueprints of delay, the strategies of frustration, and the tools of oppression. But God operates in a different dimension. He exposes what is hidden, dismantles what is built in secrecy, and reverses the outcomes intended for harm. The expectations of the wicked are not permanent. They are temporary constructs that cannot withstand divine intervention. What the enemy anticipated as your failure will turn into the stage of your victory. What he planned to destroy will become the platform of your glory. The collapse of evil expectations is both a judgment and a reversal. It is judgment because God declares that no power can stand against his plan for your life. It is a reversal because what was intended for evil will serve to glorify you. Every trap set by your adversaries will backfire. Every word spoken in malice will return to the sender. Every dark intention will explode into confusion for those who plotted it. The enemy will find that the very energies and strategies he deployed against you will be redirected to his own disadvantage. This is the law of divine reversal, and it is unstoppable when God moves in authority. Moreover, the collapse of evil expectations brings liberation to your life. There is no greater freedom than walking in the knowledge that the enemy's plans cannot succeed. Fear, worry, and doubt begin to lose their grip when you understand that the future is no longer in the hands of the wicked, but in the hands of God. What you feared, what you expected to be delayed, and what you assumed would be permanent is being overturned by a higher authority. Your destiny, your calling, and your breakthrough are now secured by heaven itself. Beloved, this principle also calls for active faith. While God's hand moves, your declaration, your obedience, and your alignment with his word amplify the effect to speak against every expectation of active fact. Every expectation. The enemy announced that no plan, no tongue, and no weapon formed against you shall prosper. In these 3 days, your prayers, your worship, and your faith will trigger the collapse of every hidden expectation formed in darkness. The enemy will be forced to witness the failure of what he thought would prevail. As the evil expectations collapse, your life will begin to shift dramatically. Delays will end, breakthroughs will manifest, and testimonies will emerge that cannot be ignored. The enemy will fall into the trap he set for you, and every hidden scheme will become a public confirmation of God's favor upon your life. This is the promise of divine reversal, and it is active and alive in your journey today. Prepare yourself for sudden manifestations. Speak boldly, pray fervently, and expect the unexpected. The collapse of evil expectations is happening now. What was meant to intimidate you will glorify you. What was intended to delay you will accelerate your rise. In these 3 days, the enemy will witness the unraveling of every strategy, and your victory will become undeniable, unstoppable, and spectacular. There is a season in the spirit where victory is no longer ordinary. It becomes supernatural. This is not a victory earned through human strength, manipulation, or effort. This is a victory ordained by God, designed to silence every adversary, overwhelm every opposition, and declare your authority in the realm of the spirit. Supernatural. Victory rises when heaven itself intervenes on behalf of the righteous. It is a victory that cannot be predicted, delayed, or resisted by any force in the natural or spiritual realm. For you, this is the promise. In these 3 days, what the enemy thought would never happen will occur. What was once impossible will manifest. What was long delayed will erupt with unstoppable power. Supernatural victory is marked by speed, decisiveness, and authority. It is sudden and it leaves no room for doubt. The same God who parted the Red Sea, who brought down walls, and who overturned kingdoms in biblical history is moving on your behalf today. He is orchestrating events in the heavens and on earth to ensure that your enemies are disoriented, exposed, and defeated. This is the kind of victory that does not merely reverse losses. It establishes your name, your destiny, and your testimony in a way that cannot be erased. When God moves supernaturally, your life becomes a platform of proof that his power is alive, active, and irreversible. Victory in the supernatural realm also carries the element of confession. Those who plotted against you will be forced to acknowledge what God has done in your life. The enemy cannot remain silent when God intervenes directly. Their schemes, their arrogance, and their attempts to suppress your destiny will collapse under divine authority, and in the process they will confess your rise, your favor, and your strength. Supernatural victory is not just about triumph, it is about validation. It is a public declaration that God is your defender, your strategist, and your champion. Another aspect of supernatural victory is transformation. As your enemies fall and confess, the circumstances that were against you will be transformed into vehicles of blessing. Opportunities previously hidden will appear. Doors that were locked will open. Favor that seemed distant will become immediate. Every aspect of your life, spiritually, financially, emotionally, and socially, will experience acceleration because the hand of God moves with power on your behalf. This is why supernatural victory is not just personal. It reshapes the environment around you, influences communities, and establishes your legacy. Supernatural victory also requires alignment with God. While the power comes from him, your faith, obedience, and persistence position you to receive it fully. Prayer, worship, and declaration act as channels that release the flow of heaven into your life. The 3 days ahead are a window of divine opportunity, a time when the atmosphere of heaven is primed to manifest judgment against your enemies and blessings for your life. As you remain steadfast in faith, the supernatural will rise and your testimony will emerge unshakable. Beloved, this is your season of authority. The hand of God is orchestrating events that will bring recognition, establishment, and validation. Your enemies will not only fall, they will acknowledge your rise. Your breakthrough will not be gradual, it will be sudden, decisive, and undeniable. The supernatural is not a possibility, it is a reality that is being released right now. Prepare yourself for the eruption of divine power. Speak boldly, pray fervently, and declare your victory. In these 3 days, the supernatural will rise, your enemies will confess, and your destiny will be established. Nothing will stop what God has already begun. Your victory is imminent. Your testimony is unavoidable, and your life will become a living proof of God's glory, power, and faithfulness. Beloved, as we draw this message to a close, hear me clearly. What God has promised in these 3 days is unstoppable. The hand of heaven is at work, and nothing formed against you shall prosper. Every enemy, every hidden plot, every scheme designed to hinder your rise is under divine judgment. The altars opposing your destiny are being consumed by fire. The atmospheres of stagnation and delay are being shifted. Every expectation of the enemy is collapsing. Your enemies will confess, they will fall, and your victory will rise in unmistakable, undeniable power. Do not doubt the timing of God. These 3 days are not ordinary, they are divinely appointed. Heaven itself is responding to your prayers, your faith, and your obedience. As the darkness unravels and the hidden schemes are exposed, your life will become a testimony that glorifies God and validates your persistence. Your breakthrough will not only be for you, it will serve as a declaration to the world that the God you serve is faithful, powerful, and just. Remember, victory in the spirit is not earned by might, not by power, but by aligning with God, trusting his timing, and speaking his word. Stand firm, walk in authority, and do not be moved by fear, doubt, or discouragement. As the enemy falls and confesses, your life will rise to new heights. Doors that were shut will open. Favor that was distant will become immediate. Every area of delay, oppression, or stagnation will be transformed into opportunity, abundance, and triumph. So now, lift your voice in faith, declare your victory, speak to every force that has opposed you, and command it to bow. Praise God in advance for what is already done in the spirit. These 3 days mark a turning point, a divine shift, where the impossible becomes possible, the hidden becomes exposed, and your enemies fall before your testimony. Get ready, beloved, for the eruption of God's power in your life. Your story is changing. Your breakthrough is arriving. Your enemies will confess, they will fall, and your victory will rise unstoppable, undeniable, and glorious. Stand in faith and receive it now. Amen.